Hello, very good morning. Welcome to Breakfast with Dan Walker and Louise Minchin.
The headlines for you this morning. It's back to school for millions of pupils in England and Wales, but will new, more relaxed COVID measures make the grade against fears of a virus spike?
Pressure on the Prime Minister Boris Johnson faces a growing backlash over plans to increase taxes to pay for social care.
And small businesses warn an increase in national insurance would devastate their recovery from the effects of COVID-19. What would the hike mean for employers and workers? I'll take a look.
A bright shining star, girls aloud singer Sarah Harding is remembered by her friends and loved ones.
A World Cup qualifier between Brazil and Argentina descended into chaos. The match had to be abandoned after 3 English-based Argentina players were accused of breaking COVID quarantine rules when entering Brazil.
Plus, is September the new August? Over the next few days, we're set to see some of the hottest conditions across the UK since late July. I'll have a full forecast here on Breakfast.
Good morning, it's Monday, it's the 6th of September, and the top story this morning is that pupils will be starting their first full week of school this morning in England, Wales and Northern Ireland as the chief medical officers in the UK consider what to do about vaccinating teenagers.
The current advice is that only 12 to 15-year-olds with health vulnerabilities should be offered the COVID jab. The government says the measures in place in England's schools strike a balance between safety and reducing disruption. Here's our education editor, Bronwyn Jeffries.
Teacher Owen Harvey started 2021 in hospital with coronavirus. He was away from his primary school class for months. Barely able to walk, Owen gradually built back his strength in his garden. So this school year is a big step back to normal for this teacher, now vaccinated, and for pupils who'll be able to mix freely in the playground.
We're just excited to get everybody back into school and to get back to something like a normal curriculum, do assemblies again, get that lovely social feeling that schools have been missing out on so much of, and just get back to being school as normal.
Testing started in some of England's secondary schools last week. It's the main precaution in place this term. The top government doctors across the UK have another decision. Should they offer the vaccine to all 12 to 15-year-olds? Experts say the benefits aren't great enough. It's a milder illness in teenagers. Schools will be trying to return to their usual routines and to reassure pupils.
School leaders need the choice to be able to adapt the contingency framework and actually make it relevant to the local need rather than a national need. So if we need to make adjustments to the measures that we put in place to minimise the risk, that we have the choice to do that, and we can do it immediately, that we do not have to wait.
Owen has been walking his way back to health, back to the classroom he loves. Like many parents and pupils, hoping this school year will be so much better than the last. Bronwyn Jeffries, BBC News.
The Prime Minister is facing backlash from MPs returning to Parliament today over plans to reform the funding of social care in England.
Many, including prominent Conservatives, are angry about reports that he's considering raising national insurance rates, which would break a manifesto pledge. The government's also expected to announce an extra £5.5 billion for the NHS. Let's run some of these items past our chief political correspondent, Adam Fleming. Good morning to you, Adam. Let's start with that first of all, then, the social care and NHS. Where are we on the spending?
So we've got the least controversial bit is being announced today, which is an extra £5.5 billion for the NHS to be spent in the second half of this financial year to help the health service cope with that backlog of people who weren't able to get treatment during COVID, and also to help the NHS cope with just the extra other stuff it's got to do because of COVID. So that is what's happening today. Then what we think is going to happen on Tuesday or Wednesday is this huge announcement about what to do about the funding of adult adult social care. And we think there'll be two big elements to that. A cap on lifetime care costs for an individual, so there'll be a limit on that, not including your accommodation costs, though crucially it'll be for the cost of your actual care, and probably an increase in the level of the means test at which you get free care from the state and you don't have to pay anything. Now that means a lot more public money going into the system, and that's got to be paid for somehow, at least that's the Chancellor's view, and it looks like the option the government's going to go for is an increase to national insurance contributions paid for by employees and employers. Now that's quite controversial within the cabinet, within the Conservative Party, and between the political parties as well, for a whole host of reasons. You've got some people saying, well, it would break a manifesto commitment that the Conservatives made at the last election. Then there's some people say, well, actually, we shouldn't be raising taxes at all. Then you get some people saying, well, raising national insurance is the wrong kind of tax to pay for this sort of thing because it's not paid for by pensioners, who are the people who are most likely to benefit from it. So there's going to be a lot of arguments about it when this policy is finally unveiled, when the government finally does a deal amongst itself about it. But the government would say that this sort of thing is very popular with the public. Opinion polls suggest that people want the social care system fixed, and they think that a cap and an increase in national insurance contributions might be a good way to do it.
OK, that's a big issue for the next few days. What else will be on the Prime Minister's desk today?
Oh, there is so much. So he's going to do a statement in Parliament today about the latest on the evacuation from Afghanistan. So we might get an update on how many people are actually being brought into the UK and how that resettlement scheme for vulnerable Afghans is going to go. Plus, there'll be an announcement of some money for extra funding for charities to help veterans with their mental health, because thousands and thousands of service personnel served in Afghanistan over the last 20 years, and some of them are having quite serious problems as a result. Then you've got this huge list of things that the government's going to have to do over the next few months. This week, you're probably going to have a decision about, do you vaccinate 12 to 15-year-olds? Because the scientific advisors from the vaccination committee said, we're not going to recommend it on health grounds. And chief medical officers to take into other things into account, like the damage done to children's education if they can't go to school. So there's that. Then there's the social care stuff that we're talking about, which is hugely controversial. There's some reforms to the planning system that are due in the next couple of weeks, which are quite controversial in the Conservative Party. You then got the build up to that big climate change conference in Glasgow in November, which involves some controversial things domestically about cutting CO2. And then, of course, you've just got the continuing fallout from COVID. And back to that first story you were talking about this morning, the return to school, which means inevitably there'll be an increase in the number of cases of COVID. And also COVID probably just going to get worse during winter anyway. So there's all that to deal with as well. It's going to be a very busy couple of months in politics.
OK, I'm sure you're going to be very busy as well, Adam. Thank you very much for that. See you in a bit.
And
oh yes, go on, after you.
I'll say it for you. We're going to be joined by the Armed Forces Minister, James Heppy, at 7:30 here on Breakfast.
The storage limit for frozen eggs, sperm and embryos could rise to 55 years as the government plans to give people greater choice over when to start a family.
At the moment, prospective parents across the UK have 10 years to use them or they're destroyed. Modern freezing techniques, though, mean eggs can now be stored for longer.
The families of victims of the MH17 air disaster will testify for the first time at a murder trial in the Netherlands. 3 Russians and 1 Ukrainian national are accused of shooting down the Malaysian Airlines plane over rebel-held eastern Ukraine in 2014. All 298 people on board died, and most of those were Dutch nationals.
Conjoined twins from Israel have been able to see each other for the first time after undergoing a gruelling 12-hour operation to separate them. The 1-year-old sisters were born conjoined at the back of the head. The surgery took months of preparation and involved dozens of experts meticulously navigating between major blood vessels. The rare procedure is only thought to have been carried out 20 times in the world, and there they are, able to face each other.
Environmentalists say the seal population in the River Thames is continuing to thrive and demonstrates the health of the river. A recent count of their numbers revealed there are more than 3,500 seals in the river, and researchers say it shows just how much the Thames has recovered since it was declared biologically dead back in the 1950s.
Look at that.
See the headlines as they happen and watch BBC News live in the app and get the full story with bbc.co.uk/news. Follow the story for all the latest with BBC News.